Hello, my love. How many times am I gonna read the exact same story, just slightly different, because the author keeps rewriting it? We are back again in the Twilight universe. Do I want to be here? Not really, honestly. I have always said that Twilight holds a very nostalgic place in my heart. However, the older I get, the more I can see all of the problems with it, and the more I can see that it's not actually a very good book series. However, because I enjoyed it when I was a teenager, a lot younger, all of that was massive back then, it holds a very nostalgic place in my heart, and the first film especially, it will forever be something that I watch when I feel shit. I have done a few videos exploring various different Twilight offshoots, both parody fan-made things and Stephenie Meyer's own recreations of the story, and we're back there today with a book that I honestly did not know existed until a few months ago, I think. Some of you might already be aware of this book, but that is Life and Death. This was released for the 10th anniversary of Twilight being published, and this is essentially Twilight, but everyone is the opposite gender. That is it. That is the only difference. I've read the author's note or foreword in this, and Stephenie's basically justified this by saying the publishers wanted something special for the 10th anniversary, and she didn't have Midnight Sun ready in time. She wanted to do something more than just a special edition of the book, and something that had come up throughout the years at conventions and when talking with fans was the idea of Bella very much being that stereotypical woman who needs saving, and her argument was always, no, she's just a human who needs saving. So she thought this would be a fun idea to explore, to show that actually it's just the fact that our main protagonist is a human that makes them need that help, and that actually the story would be no different if it was about a guy falling in love with a female vampire. He would still be just as obsessed and still need saving just as much as Bella, our original character, did. So that's her justification for it. There are also mentions in there that she just didn't have enough time to finish Midnight Sun for the 10th edition, but she started this from scratch for the 10th anniversary, which makes me think this was maybe just a little bit of a rushed thing for her to push something out, but I may be unfairly judging that there. Maybe it'll be okay. I'm gonna read it. It's only 300 and something pages, so I'm hoping it won't be as awful and boring as Midnight Sun was. It seems ridiculous to me. It seems like it didn't need to exist, and it's silly and pointless, and I think fans would have been fine with a special edition for the anniversary, but we're back here in the Twilight world. Let's just fucking do it. Yeah, I'm genuinely 9 pages in, and I've pulled out my battered old copy of Twilight, which I bought in 2008, so it is gross. There's bookmarks all over it. There's pages folded down where I've clearly started rereading it and not finished it. I've spilt stuff on it. It's a bit of a mess, but I wanted to compare, mainly because Stephenie Meyer's thing was I'm writing this to show that the story would be exactly the same regardless if it was a guy as the main character. She basically framed it as yeah, the guy can need help too. It's not just women who need that. That's the lens she's writing it through, right? And these might be really, really small little things, but I was just, as I'm reading, I was like, I think that's a tiny little bit different. So I checked. 2 little things that I've noticed that, again, they're not the biggest deal, but I think do show Stephenie Meyer's difference in opinion of men versus women. When Charlie is talking about the truck that he's bought Bella in Twilight, and Bella's asking all the questions to try and work out how old it is, he mentions that he's bought it off Billy, his friend, and that although it's really old, Billy has done a lot of work on it over the years, meaning Billy himself, the man, has done work on a car. In Life and Death, Billy is not Billy. What is their name? Bonnie. Her name's Bonnie. When he's talking about exact same conversation there, everything's the exact same, except the changes. She's had a lot of work done on it over the years, which maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I thought everything was supposed to be exactly the same, Stephenie. Why can't women work on cars too? Anyway, Twilight, when Bella goes to unpack and you have the iconic, the best thing about Charlie, he doesn't hover. That bit. She stares out the window and cries because she's upset about being there. Beau, our man, he doesn't cry. His thoughts just get dark. or he tries to prevent his thoughts getting dark, but he doesn't cry. No tears are shed. I'll be interested to see later, because I know Bella cries herself to sleep at the end of this chapter. Be interested to see if Beau does that. If he doesn't, Stephanie, you can't claim that this is exactly the same, and you're showing that it would be exactly the same even if the genders were swapped. You can't claim that if you're making stupid little choices like this that perpetuate the little gender roles that our society has. Anyway, very early, but there we go. 10 pages later, I'm back again. So we've just met the Cullens, right? Obviously they've all been swapped too. We get the descriptions of them, and again, I've compared this to the original text. Jasper and Alice, generally fine. Like, kind of fits their characters fine. You can still tell who they're supposed to be. They still have their own characters. Emma and Rosalie, she's literally just telling us she swapped them, but they're the exact same. Emma, obviously, is a big, beefy, weightlifting dude bro, right? We know this. Girl Emmett, Eleanor, is tall and athletic in a thin way. Said she looks like she could be on the volleyball team, has really long legs, right? Why is she not beefy too? If really, Stephanie, you should not have said what you said, because I'm fixating on it. If the point was all of it could be the same, if the genders were different, why is Eleanor not a big, beefy, weightlifting girl? Like, why? Why do we need to make her more acceptably feminine? And then Rosalie, who's called Royal, that's a ridiculous name, but anyway, Royal, who is obviously the guy version of Rosalie, is just Emmett, but with blonde hair instead. Is like a star athlete, would be the one that gets all of the, would be like a weightlifter. That is how Emmett is described originally. So you can't just say that's the male version of Rosalie and just give Emmett's description instead. Like, I might be being too picky here. It's just all of these little things are adding up to make me think you are just saying, and by you I mean you, Stephanie, are just saying you did this from like a feminist point of view to show that the woman doesn't always need saving. A strong woman can save a man too. You're saying that, but really I think what you did was just you needed to put something out for money. You'd already written the whole book, so you thought you could just change a few bits of it quickly and it would be fine. That might be really harsh, very early comments considering I'm only about 20 pages into this, but given all of the other very obvious perpetuations of gender stereotypes in this, I'm not sold that was actually why you did this, or that you actually particularly cared about this. But okay, I'm a bit over like 20% through. I think I'm literally on the verge of falling asleep, so I might have to take a little break from reading. But I mean, honestly, so far Edith and Beau are like friends now. They've arranged to drive to Seattle together, and we're just before the beach weekend where Jacob, who we still haven't met yet, so I don't know what Jacob's name is in this, where he tells Bella in the original the like mythology around their tribe. So we're just getting to that point. Honestly, not that much is different. If you compare it to the original book, it's literally just copy and pasted with like a few things changed. It's mostly the same. There are a few little extra bits that have been added in as well to like, I suppose, further show or explain certain things, like Beau's reaction to Charlie putting the snow chains on his tires more goes into like a little bit of that whole him having to be the parent for his mum before that. I mean, not in a huge deal, honestly. It's like a few extra sentences. I'm not going to give that much credit to it, but there's like a few little extra bits like that, which in the like author's note at the beginning, Stephanie Meyer did say she wanted to add things like that she wished she'd done in the original. So far, I like, it's okay. It's not wonderful. I don't think this needed to exist. All I will say is Edith as a vampire, I'm enjoying that. Honestly, I am enjoying that. When you look back Edward Cullen is just a creepy weirdo. You know, I suppose you could argue, seeing as technically Edith is the exact same, she's probably just a creepy weirdo as well. But so far, the changes that Stephanie has made to the dialogue, like, it's not a lot. Honestly, most of it is just copied and pasted. It's not a lot, but like the few little bits she has changed to make it not so copy and paste and to show that Edith is like more of a original character or whatever, are interesting and have made me find her more interesting, because in the original books, Bella is my favourite. I love Bella. I will forever defend Bella Swan. I also love Emmett, but Bella is my favourite. In this, Beau's alright. He's okay. But Edith is, I suppose, slightly more interesting to me than Edward was. Anyway, but I'm going to have a little break, I think, because... yeah, I'm literally on the verge of falling asleep. I'm really tired. So I'm going to have a break and do something else and come back to it. And we'll see how this goes. Okay, so at this point, it's honestly like a week, maybe longer later. I'll be honest, I'm really struggling with this book. It's so boring. Mainly because, for the most part, it is just a copy and paste of Twilight. There is a lot of things that have changed, but for the most part, it's just, again, like with Midnight Sun, where it's the same plot, the same things are happening. You thought you'd get different things because it's from someone else's point of view, but it's just the same and boring. I've been slowly getting through it, slowly reading it over the past week. I left it last night at the part after they go to the meadow for the first time and Beau sees Edith in the sun, and I'm pretty sure the next chapter is the baseball chapter, or that's going to be one of the next two chapters. So we're starting to get into the actual shit, but I do think my initial comments and criticisms of this were maybe a little bit harsh and me just looking for things. I do generally think everything has been changed in a way to make Beau more obviously masculine. I don't know if this is done well or not. Hear me out, right? Okay, so I was annoyed at Stephanie for like removing certain things, like him crying on the first day he gets there and stuff like that, because I was like, well, it's not exactly the same then, is it? If you're reinforcing that thing of boys don't cry, you can't say it's exactly the same. However, the way she's changed it to make him, like, masculine, I do think has just made him quite unlikable and has added an interesting or potentially annoying element to the story, which I don't really know if it was intentional or not. Essentially, there's frequent parts throughout where Beau keeps just talking about how small Edith is, and he's describing like her body at one point is when they're about to go into the meadow and she's wearing like a tank top, so he'll be able to see more of her skin in the sun, and everything is described as like fragile, breakable, vulnerable when he's looking over like the different parts of her body. And I'm like, dude, she's a 100-year-old vampire who literally saved you from being crushed by a car by denting that car herself and then picking the car up to move it off you. And you're calling her vulnerable and delicate. Then when they're coming back from the meadow and she like offers to like carry him back, he's like, how am I gonna get on your back? You're so small. And at this point, we've had the as if you can outrun me, which is exactly the same, by the way. That is exactly the same. But we've had the as if you could outrun me part. And I'm just like, again, I'm like, dude, you have just seen her rip a tree branch off the tree and entirely break another tree. And you're like, she's not going to be able to carry me on her back. She's too small. And that is a very standard guy thing that I think is coming across well, but it's also just making him look like an absolute idiot. It's not like he seems particularly threatened by how strong she is or anything. It's just like he's still automatically doing that guy thing of being like, oh my god, girls are so weak and small. I'm so much stronger, even though she's literally a vampire. Then there's really small, like, subtle changes in wording as well, of like he keeps referring to Edith as mine, which I appreciate it's a very, it's a very common thing now in romantasy, especially, of male characters referring to their female partners as their possession. Very common now. I suppose it wouldn't really have been at the time, but again, it's just very interesting to see the difference in when she was writing from a girl's point of view, none of that was there, that possessive side, and now she's writing from Beau's point of view, and she's mine. She's mine, Like I said, I can't tell if that's done well on purpose, because I don't have that much faith in Stephenie Meyer. It does just make him quite annoying. And then another thing that adds to that is, like, all of the parts in Twilight when Edward would be like, you're not like anyone else I've met, you're really interesting, blah blah blah, and you could argue it's because she's just the only person whose thoughts he can't hear, and I don't know if that interest would last for eternity, but anyway, that was believable to me. Honestly, it was believable to me that this grumpy, awkward virgin of 100-year-old vampire had met this girl and was like, yeah, she's very different to everyone else. Because, Edward he's not seen, although he's very attractive, when you actually sit back and look at it, he is not cool. He is really, really uncool. It's not surprising that he wouldn't have really had many relationships or met many people that he would have been impressed by. So when he's saying all of that to Bella, it seems very believable. When Edith is saying that to Beau, I'm sorry, I don't believe for a minute that this beautiful vampire that has been alive for 100 years is saying that to a teenage boy, because so far from reading this, he is any other teenage boy. All teenage boys are the same, and he is just one of them. I do not believe for a second that she genuinely thinks that he is different from anyone else she's ever met. It just doesn't work. It's not believable, honestly, because he does just read like a boring, typical boy. There's nothing about him that would make you believe that, and Edith isn't being shown in that I'm an awkward old vampire who never talks to anyone and doesn't like people way. She's freaking awesome. I mean, he keeps calling her a goddess. Like, it's just not believable for some reason, and I think that might just be me being like, women are inherently more interesting than men, always. So maybe that's why I don't find it believable, but just every time one of those lines come up, I'm like, really, Edith? Really, how many times have you been to high school? You haven't met this exact same boy 5,000 times already? Like, really? I think those are my only real comments on it being different, though. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same. A few things have been added in. My notes on my Kindle aren't particularly working for some reason, so I can't actually see all my notes properly, because I know I've added more than this. I don't really know why they're not working. Oh, one difference that she decided to add in was to take your minds back to Twilight. You remember the whole thing in the first book where after Tyler hits Bella with the car, he just decides he's taking Bella to prom as like a, I'm sorry, but also he obviously fancies her. And Lauren, the character that I think just gets forgotten after this point, Lauren is really annoyed and doesn't like Bella because she fancies Tyler. And then how that resolves in Twilight is Tyler comes to pick her up for prom, but she's just not at home because she's already gone with Edward. So she never confronts the situation or tells Tyler that. In Life and Death, Beau does like a whole, he goes up to what's her name, Taylor, the version of Tyler, goes up to Taylor in the cafeteria at lunch and does a whole dramatic scene. Literally, he's like, I can't do this anymore, it's not fair for you to just use me to make someone else jealous, because he's clearly trying to make Taylor back off in a way that won't hurt her feelings, and also get her with, I don't remember what the guy's version of Lauren is called, but get her with the Lauren character, right? He's trying to do everyone a favor. But one, it was ridiculously out of character because he never talks to any of these people anymore, and he's quiet and awkward. Two, it was so cringe to read. It was so embarrassing. And then Edith was just like, that was amazing. No, it fucking wasn't, Edith. You're better than this. Come on. Like, so there's small differences like that, but honestly not enough to make it interesting. The rest of it is literally just a copy and paste. Maybe things have slightly been rearranged. A few words here and there have been changed. A few actions here and there have been changed. Yeah, there's an occasional additional conversation that's been added in that I think of the ones that Stephanie is like, I wish I'd added this in sooner. Generally, it's like exactly the same, and it's... I'm just struggling to understand. No, I completely understand why this was published, actually, and I'm standing by the fact that it was just published for money and it was easy to push out in time for the anniversary, and not really much love or care went into this. I'm like, I think 60-ish% through now, so I don't actually have that much left. We're just getting to the baseball bit, and obviously shit goes down at that point, so I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna try and finish it today or tomorrow, because I want to be done with this book. Okay, so honestly, I don't really have that much to say at this point. I'm now, I think, like 75, maybe 80% done. So we're nearly through it. We're nearly there. There was just one thing that I remembered that I hadn't mentioned that I wanted to briefly touch on. Mainly because I'm trying to put off reading the chapter where Beau tells Charlie he needs to leave, because I have read and watched that scene too many times. I don't want to see Charlie get upset again. But anyway, we're just putting that off for a minute while I complain about something else. Something that in like the author's note Stephanie mentioned at the beginning was that one of the different ways that Beau's character developed and evolved from Bella's was that he was a little OCD. I don't think she specifically said a little. She said he was more OCD. Let me tell you, this woman has no understanding of what OCD is. It hasn't really come up that many times. I think there's like 3 times it's come up. There's a bit at the beginning where... might be about cupboard organization or something. At some point, Beau's internal monologue, he does say, like, I'm a bit OCD about things like that. And this most recent example, this is the only one I can find, just before they go to play baseball, when Beau is at home on his own waiting for Charlie to come back, and he's, like, nervous about explaining to Charlie that Edith is his girlfriend. He cleans to distract himself, and when he's finished cleaning, he stacks all of the cleaning supplies in alphabetical order under the sink. Yeah, those are the examples of OCD that we have in this book. And I would just like to make it very, very clear that is not what OCD is. Yeah, OCD can sometimes be related to cleaning, but it's not just, I like things in a specific order for no reason, or I like things to be clean because I like them being clean. That's not what OCD is. OCD is, if I don't do this thing, someone's gonna die and it will be my fault. That's what OCD is. It is incredibly debilitating for a lot of people, and I fucking hate when people use that term incorrectly, or when writers like this or people in TV shows just perpetuate the idea that OCD is just being organized, and it's really not. So that's something that really bothered me. Luckily, it's not very present in the book, but I didn't want to forget to mention it. So while I'm putting off reading the next chapter, I thought I would mention it now. If you particularly care about what happens in this book, don't watch this part. This is no longer just a copy and paste. What the fuck? We're at 90% through. I have apparently 44 minutes left in this book, right? And we've taken a swerve. We are completely no longer in Twilight territory. So I did think beforehand, because she only wrote 1 book, is this going to be different? It is different. So we're at the ballet studio, right? James is called Joss in this, and everything's the same. There's the whole thing where pretends to have got Beau's mom and lures Beau to the ballet studio, right? Okay. And doing the whole, we're going to make a little tape, I'm going to film this, torturing him, essentially, bites him like James does to Bella. But Edith can't get rid of the venom the way Edward did. Archie has a vision. There's only 2 outcomes. Either she's not going to be able to stop herself and he will die, or he'll turn. There's no him staying human. And I mean, I understand this because obviously Stephanie wasn't going to rewrite the whole series to have everything else happen as well. But what a twist! I've been here like, Stephanie, this is just a copy and paste. Why did you release this? And for the most part, I still agree with it. But it looks like Beau is going to become a vampire. We've only got 10% left of the book, so I don't know how we're going to wrap all of this up and what's going to happen with that. But crazy, insane, can't believe it that she made that choice, but kind of glad that she did make that choice, honestly. I can't believe I have something positive to say. Okay, I finished it. He does become a vampire. They just let him turn, and in the like afterword at the end is like he just left just like 5 minutes earlier than Bella did in the original, and that was why it was already too late. And like, I like that choice. Don't get me wrong. I like that choice. I mean, the following chapters after that, while he was like turning, was literally just an info dump of all of the things that would have been explained in later books, like that were explained in like New Moon and Eclipse as well, that then obviously couldn't be explained because those books aren't going to exist. So that was just like a lot of very quick, oh, here's what would have happened with these characters. Like all of the backstories and stuff, and like explanations of the Volturi and stuff like that. Very quick, very rushed, it felt, just like squeezed into that tiny last little bit. I didn't hate the change though, honestly. I quite enjoyed it. It made reading what was essentially just a copy and paste book of another book somewhat more enjoyable, because like if it had just been exactly the same, it would have really been like, what is the point of this book existing? I'm still of the opinion that there was no point in that book existing at all. I think Stephanie Meyer's tried to sell it as like, oh, it's to show that it wouldn't have been different, blah blah blah, if the genders were swapped. It was different. It was different. There were so many little changes that just reinforced stereotypical gender beliefs and roles. I mean, I know I kind of moaned about some of them at the beginning, and maybe I was being a little bit picky, but it's more the fact that there's a lot of little things that build up that you're like, why was that changed? There was really no need for that to be changed, other than you just reinforcing gender stereotypes. Like, one of the things as well, I don't think I mentioned, was when Edith comes to meet Charlie the first and only time. If you remember in Twilight, Charlie is like, oh, he's a bit old for you, isn't he? Like, he's very protective of Bella in that. I love Charlie, don't get me wrong, Charlie is one of the best characters in the Twilight series. However, he has that very stereotypical, kind of gross, overprotective man view of his daughter dating anyone. In this, in Life and Death, Charlie's just like, oh my god, how did you get a girlfriend that's so pretty? Like, that's it. It's almost like that, yeah, go on, son. Which again is just gross. It's really gross. And there was no need for that to be different, other than just because that's what we would expect to happen if it was a guy bringing a girl home, vice versa, you know? You can say it was to prove that all you want, Stephanie, but I don't think you did that. I think you just made stupid little changes that actually reinforced those things. I also think this was just for money, really. I don't think you had Midnight Sun done in time and you wanted to put something out to get more money. That is all this was for. And I have somewhat of an enjoyable time towards the end, yeah, but for the most part of this book it was just really boring, because it is the exact same story. It is just copied and pasted literally word for word for the most part, aside from a few very subtle changes here and there. I don't really think anyone needs to read this book, honestly. I don't think you're missing out. Even if you're a really big Twilight fan, I don't think you're missing out by not reading this. It was just a waste of time, a waste of paper. I'm maybe being a bit harsh, but one thing I will say as a unironic, nostalgic Twilight enjoyer is that the decision to keep Beau a vampire, great, loved that. What I did not love was the unnecessary chapter where Beau goes to watch his own funeral and sees Charlie being really upset at his funeral, and then also thinking about the fact that the last thing he ever would have said to Charlie was when he's storming out of the house and saying the same words that Renee said when she left him. I didn't need that reminder. I didn't need Charlie to be sadder than he already was in that moment. So thanks for that. That was not enjoyable. I rated it 3 stars in case you were interested. I don't know that it necessarily deserves that. For most of the time I was reading it, I was fairly convinced this was going to be like a 1 or 2 star read, because probably 2 stars, because I thought Edith's character was actually more interesting than Edward. I quite enjoyed her as a character. The whole entire Cullen family being gender swapped was honestly very confusing, and I was still just imagining the original characters. So that I didn't enjoy so much, but Edith, she was fun. Sure, I liked her. She was great. Beau was kind of just an average teenage boy, nothing really wonderful about him. But Edith made me think, oh, maybe I'll give this 2 stars. And then the ending honestly pushed it up to 3. Do I think it was actually good or worth anyone's time to read? No. It felt, with like how I was like actually invested and shocked by the ending, it made it feel a little bit unfair to just give it 2. So I would not recommend reading this. You're not missing anything. The only thing you need to know is the fact that Beau doesn't get saved and he gets turned into a vampire. That's the only thing you need to know to know what happens in this book, because if you've already read Twilight, you know everything else that happens. So I would not read this, but I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts and opinions on it and me reading it. I think I need to take a break from the Twilight universe for a while. I said that last time after Midnight Sun. I also said it after I read all the parodies, so we'll see. I'll probably be back here in like a few months' time because I just can't seem to leave. But that is all I have for you today. So I hope wherever you are, you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.